Ella stood at the edge of the decaying road, her heart pounding. In the distance, the silhouette of the forgotten house emerged through the fog, its windows black as pitch. It was said to be abandoned, but something about it felt alive, like it was waiting. She hesitated, feeling the chill of the wind tug at her skin as the house seemed to beckon her closer. Ella pushed the rusted gate open, its squeal echoing in the stillness. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, the path cracked and uneven beneath her feet. As she stepped closer to the front porch, the door creaked open on its own, the dark interior inviting her in. She could feel eyes on her, though no one was there. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the smell of decay filled her nostrils. The walls were peeling, and strange symbols were scrawled on the floor in faded red. Her footsteps echoed unnervingly as she moved deeper, her breath coming out in nervous puffs. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't turn back now. Ella froze when she heard a whispering sound, faint but distinct. It came from the staircase, as if someone or something was calling her name. She spun around, her pulse racing, but the house was empty. Still, she felt an oppressive presence, the walls seeming to close in on her. Compelled by an unseen force, Ella climbed the stairs, her hand gripping the railing tightly. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if it was trying to lure her to the upper floor. As she reached the top, the air grew colder, and she saw a door at the end of the hall. A door that seemed to be made of shadows itself. Her heart hammered in her chest. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a room full of old, shattered furniture and shattered mirrors. In the reflection of the mirrors, she saw something moving behind her, faint like a dark figure. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. The mirrors seemed to laugh at her, reflecting a twisted version of herself. Ella's breath caught when she noticed something on the floor. Fresh footprints, though she was certain she was alone. The prints led toward a hidden door beneath the floorboards. She knelt down, her fingers trembling as she pried the boards open. What lay beneath was far worse than she expected. Beneath the floor was a narrow, dirt-filled tunnel that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were lined with old, decaying bones, some human, some animal. A rancid smell filled the air as Ella descended into the dark, her only light the flickering flame of her match. The tunnel seemed to move with her, narrowing the further she went. Ella stumbled forward, her heart thudding in her chest, when a voice called out from the darkness. "You shouldn't have come," it said, raspy and guttural. She spun around, but there was no one there. The tunnel was alive with whispers, growing louder and louder as she pushed forward. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Its walls adorned with strange symbols and runes that seemed to pulse with energy. In the center was a stone altar, covered in what looked like blood. The air was thick with dread, and Ella could feel the weight of something ancient and evil pressing in on her. It was waiting. As Ella approached the altar, her hands trembling, she saw a figure kneeling beside it, a woman with hollow, empty eyes. "It's too late," the woman whispered, her voice barely a breath. "You've awakened it." Before Ella could react, the ground shook, and the shadows around them began to twist and writhe. Ella's blood ran cold as the shadows erupted, forming into a monstrous shape. It had the face of the woman, but its eyes were filled with madness. The creature reached for her, its fingers elongated and dripping with black substance. She tried to scream, but the air was suffocating, leaving her breathless. She turned and fled, the tunnel collapsing behind her as the creature pursued. The walls seemed to close in on her, and the path became a labyrinth of twisting corridors. Her pulse raced as she heard the creature's raspy breathing growing closer. There was no escape, but she had to try. Ella ran blindly through the maze-like corridors, her vision blurred with fear. The creature's voice echoed, mocking her, promising that she would never leave. Her foot caught on something, sending her crashing to the ground, but she pushed herself up again, tears streaming down her face. She had to get out. The floor beneath her feet gave way, and Ella tumbled into a pit, landing hard on the cold stone ground below. She groaned, trying to stand, but a crushing weight pressed down on her chest. Something was in the pit with her, watching her, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. As Ella's eyes adjusted, she saw dozens of pale faces emerging from the shadows, their mouths open in silent screams. The figures reached for her, their fingers cold and clammy, dragging her deeper into the pit. She struggled, her body refusing to cooperate as she was pulled under. The faces were now inches from hers, their hollow eyes filled with despair. With a final burst of strength, Ella broke free from the pit and scrambled up to the surface. She was back in the house, but everything was different, twisted. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and the house was alive, breathing in sync with her. She stumbled toward the door, desperate to escape, but the door slammed shut. The whispers returned, louder than ever before, calling her name, mocking her efforts to leave. Ella's breath was ragged, her mind a whirlwind of terror and confusion. Every corner she turned, another shadow waited for her. She could feel her sanity unraveling. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the floor, crying. "Please, let me go," she begged, but the walls only closed in tighter. The house had claimed her, body and soul. The floor beneath her cracked open, and a dark, hollow figure emerged, its grin twisted with malice. The figure was a reflection of herself, twisted and grotesque, its eyes filled with pure malice. It reached out, and Ella could feel herself being pulled toward it. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the house, the walls closing around her. She was trapped in her own nightmare. Ella's vision blurred, and the world around her began to distort. The shadows twisted into faces, the walls morphed into monstrous limbs reaching out for her, and the air grew thick with a suffocating force. Her mind screamed for release, but she couldn't escape. The house was everywhere. It was feeding on her fear, growing stronger with each passing second. Suddenly, Ella found herself outside, though she couldn't remember how she had gotten there. The house loomed behind her, its windows now glowing like eyes, watching her every move. The ground beneath her feet cracked open, revealing the same dark tunnel she had escaped from. She was back at the beginning, but this time, it wasn't a mistake. This was where she was meant to be. The whispers returned, louder than ever, as if they were now a chorus of voices in her mind. "You're ours now," they said, their tone dripping with malice. Ella wanted to scream, to fight, but her body felt like it was no longer her own. The house had stolen her, her soul bound to its dark essence forever. As she stood frozen, unable to move, the house began to change once more. The walls pulsed, and the floor shifted beneath her, creating a maze that seemed to stretch on into infinity. Ella's reflection appeared in every window and mirror, but it wasn't her anymore. It was the twisted version of herself, grinning at her with dark, empty eyes. She realized then, the house had not just claimed her, it had claimed her very soul. Ella's scream was lost in the silence that followed, and the house stood still, waiting for its next victim. She was gone now, her name erased from the world, swallowed by the darkness of the forgotten house. The wind howled outside, but there was no one to hear it. The house, as ancient and malevolent as ever, waited patiently for the next soul to wander too close. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for more new videos.